Back for session 3. There was still one big problem. With so many Jews passing through the home, the Gestapo was sure to investigate the Beiji soon. What would Corey do if the Germans showed up at the door and demanded to come inside? Even though Corey tried very hard to make sure everyone was safe, this truth always loomed in the back of her mind. Once again, she prayed earnestly for an answer. And just as with all her other needs, the Lord provided an answer. One night, a family friend, a kind man that Betsy and Corey had nicknamed Pickwick, knocked on the alley door. "There are some people you have to meet," he told her. And with that, he took Corey. I'll show you a picture. This is how she got around. And by this time, the tires have worn out on her bicycle. And so you can see they wrapped rags around the wire rim of the bicycle to make it a little more comfortable and also a little less noisy since they are often out after curfew. So she rode her bike behind Pickwick to this home. Waiting for her in a back room, away from the prying eyes of the secret police, were the members of the Dutch resistance. These were people just like Corey who secretly helped Jews. It seemed God had a whole army of people right there in Harlem, all doing their best to help. Urged on by Pickwick, Corey told her story of hiding Harlem's Jews and helping them to safety. She finished by explaining her greatest fear, that the Germans would find her Jews and take them away. These people listened with sympathy, offering what services they could to help Corey's little operation. I trailed about the room after Pickwick, shaking the hands of the people he singled out. They were strange introductions, for no names were mentioned, only occasionally an address and "ask for Mrs. Smith" or Mr. Smith. When I had met my fourth Mr. Smith, Kick explained with a grin, "It's the only name in the underground." So this was the underground. But where were these people from? Eventually, I realized with a shiver down my spine that I was meeting the National Group. They were instantly sympathetic with my efforts to help. I blushed to hear Pickwick describe me as the head of an operation in this city. It sounded so professional. A hollow space under the stairs and some haphazard friendships were not an operation. The others here were obviously professional. But they greeted me with grave courtesy, murmuring what they had to offer: false identity papers, the use of a car with official government plates, signature forgery. Then Pickwick introduced me to a little man with a wispy goatee. "Our host informs me," the man began formally, "that your headquarters building lacks a secret room. This is a danger for all. With your permission, I will pay you a visit in the coming week." Years later, I would learn that he was one of the most famous architects in all of Europe, but I knew him only as Mr. Smith. One morning soon afterward, the first customer in the shop was this man with a small, thin goatee named Smith. Mr. Smith examined and approved the hiding place for ration cards beneath the bottom step. He also pronounced acceptable the warning system we had worked out. This was a triangle-shaped wooden sign advertising Alpina watches that I had placed in the dining room window. As long as the sign was in the window, it was safe to enter. But when I showed him a cubbyhole behind the corner cupboard in the dining room, he shook his head. Some ancient redesigning of the house had left a crawl space in that corner, and we had been secreting jewelry, silver coins, and other valuables there. Not only had the rabbi brought us his library, but other Jewish families had brought their treasures to the Beiji for safekeeping. The space was large enough that we believed a person could crawl in there if necessary. But Mr. Smith dismissed it without a second glance. The first place they'd look. "Don't bother to change it, though. It's only silver. We're interested in saving people, not things." He started up the narrow corkscrew stairs, and as he mounted, so did his spirits. He paused in delight at the odd-placed landings. He pounded on the old crooked walls and laughed aloud as the floor levels of the two old houses continued out of phase. "What an impossibility," he said in an awestruck voice. "What an unbelievable, unpredictable impossibility. Miss Ten Boom, if all houses were constructed like this one, you would see before you a less worried man." At the top of the stairs, he entered my bedroom. "This is it," he exclaimed. "You want your hiding place as high as possible. It gives you the best chance to reach it while the search is on below." Mr. Smith began measuring. He moved the wobbly old wardrobe away from the wall and pulled my bed into the center of the room. "This is where the false wall will go." Excitedly, he penciled a line along the floor 30 inches from the back wall. He stood up and gazed at it. "That's as big as I dare," he said. "It will easily take a cot mattress, though." Over the next few days, Mr. Smith and his workmen were in and out of our house. They never knocked. At each visit, each man carried in something: tools in a folded newspaper, a few bricks inside a briefcase. I ventured to wonder if perhaps a wooden wall would not be easier than a brick. "Wood sounds hollow," he said. "No, brick is the only thing for false walls." And so here you see them starting construction of the false wall. After the wall was up, the plasterer came, then the carpenter, and finally the painter. 6 days after he had begun, Mr. Smith called Father, Betsy, and me to see. We stood in the doorway and gaped. The smell of fresh paint was everywhere, but surely nothing in this room was newly painted. All 4 walls had that streaked and grimy look that rooms got because we burned coal. The ancient molding ran unbroken around the ceiling, chipped and peeling here and there, obviously undisturbed for 150 years. Old water stains streaked the back wall, a wall that even I, who had lived half a century in this very room, could scarcely believe was not the original, but set back a precious 2.5 feet from the true wall of the building. Built-in bookcases, old sagging shelves with the same water stains as the wall behind them, ran along this false wall. Down in the far left-hand corner beneath the bottom shelf, a sliding panel 2 feet high and 2 feet wide opened into the secret room. Here you can see the panel. Mr. Smith stooped and pulled this panel up. On hands and knees, Betsy and I crawled into the narrow room behind it. Inside, we could stand up, sit, or even stretch out one at a time on the single mattress. A concealed vent allowed air to enter from outside. "Keep a water jug there," said Mr. Smith, crawling in behind us. "Change the water once a week. Hardtack," which is these biscuits that are cooked really hard, "and vitamins will keep indefinitely. Anytime there is anyone in the house whose presence is unofficial, all possessions except the clothes on his back must be stored in here." Dropping to our knees again, we crawled out single file. "Move back into your bedroom," he told me. "Everything exactly as before." With his fist, he struck the wall above the bookshelves. "The Gestapo could search for a year," he said. "They'll never find this one." By early 1943, it was getting harder to find safe homes in the country for the scores of Jews who were passing through our underground station. Even with ration cards and forged papers, there just were not enough places for them all. Sooner or later, we knew we were going to have to start hiding people in the city. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out where I'm supposed to go here. One morning in the middle of June, the telephone rang. "We have a man's watch here that's giving us trouble. We can't find anyone to repair it. The face is very old-fashioned." So, a Jew whose features gave him away. Some Jews just have a look, a nose style, or the way they keep their beard, different things that just they are given away that they are a Jew just by their features. This was the hardest kind of person to place. "Send the watch over and I'll see what we can do in our own shop." Promptly at 7 that evening, the side doorbell rang. I glanced at the mirror in the window of the dining room where we were still sitting. Even from the side of his head, I could tell that this was our old-fashioned watch. I ran down to the door. "Do come in." The smiling man in his early 30s with a balding head and minuscule glasses gave an elaborate bow. I liked him instantly. We would learn that he had been cantor in the synagogue in Amsterdam. For all his seeming lightheartedness, he had suffered much. Most of his family had been arrested. His wife and children were hiding in a farm that had declined to accept this man, for obvious reasons, he said with a grimace. So, and they nicknamed him Yussi. So Yussi became their first permanent resident hiding Jew. Within a week, though, there were 3 new permanent additions. First, there was Jop. He was our current apprentice in the watch shop. And I didn't tell this earlier. Not only were Jews in danger of being taken, also Dutch teenage boys were snatched up off the street and taken to Germany to slave in German ammunition factories. So it was unsafe for for Holland's own teenagers to be out on the street. So I didn't say this earlier. They would often dress these boys up in girls' clothing if they had to be out on the street. But so their current apprentice, Jop, had twice almost been taken to these ammunition factories. The second time it happened, his parents asked if he could stay at the BG, and we agreed. The other 2 permanent residents were Henk, a young Jewish lawyer, and Leondert, a schoolteacher, a Jew. Leondert made an especially important contribution to the secret life of the BG. He installed our electric warning system. Pickwick had said, "Cornelia, I understand you have no alarm system in your house. This is purest folly. Also, I am given to believe that you are not carrying on regular drills for your guests. A raid may come any day," Pickwick continued. "I don't see how you can avoid one. Your secret room is no good to you if people can't get to it in time. I know this Leondert. He's a very passable electrician. Get him to put a buzzer in every room with a door or a window on the street. Then hold practice drills until your people can disappear in that room without a trace in less than a minute." Leondert did the electrical work that very weekend. He installed a buzzer near the top of the stairs, loud enough to be heard all over the house, but not outside. Then he placed buttons to sound the buzzer at every vantage point where trouble might first be spotted. Now we were ready for our first trial run. Already, the 4 unacknowledged members of our household were climbing up to the secret room twice a day, in the morning to store their night clothes and their bedding and their toiletries, and in the evening to put away their day things. Members of our group who had to spend the night also kept raincoats, hats, anything they had brought with them in that room. That made a good deal of traffic in and out of my small bedroom, smaller now by nearly a yard. Many nights my last waking sight would be Yussi in a robe and tasseled nightcap, handing his day clothes through the secret panel. The purpose of the drills was to see how rapidly people could reach the room at any hour of the day or night without prior notice. A tall young man arrived from Pickwick one morning to teach me how to conduct the drills. You know his name was Mr. Smith. Meal times, he said, that's a favorite hour for a raid. Also, the middle of the night. He strode from room to room, pointing to evidence that more than 3 people lived in the house. He paused in a bedroom door. If the raid comes at night, they must not only take their sheets and blankets, but they must turn over the mattress. That's the Gestapo's favorite trick, feeling for a warm spot on a bed. Mr. Smith stayed for lunch. There were 11 of us at the table that day. When, without warning, Mr. Smith leaned back in his chair and pushed the button below the window. Above us, the buzzer sounded. People sprang to their feet, snatching up glasses and plates, scrambling for the stairs. Cries of, "Faster! Not so loud!" and "You're spilling it!" reached us as Father, Betsy, and I hastily arranged table and chairs to look like a lunch for 3 in progress. "No, you should leave my place," Mr. Smith instructed. "You could have a guest for lunch." At last we were seated again, and silence reigned upstairs. The whole process had taken 4 minutes. They wanted it under a minute. Later, we gathered again around the dining room table, and Mr. Smith set out before him the incriminating evidence he had found. 2 spoons and a piece of carrot on the stairs, pipe ashes in an unoccupied bedroom. The next night, I sounded the alarm again, and this time we shaved 1 minute and 33 seconds off our run. By our 5th trial, we were down to 2 minutes. We never did achieve it under a minute, but with practice, we learned to jump up from whatever we were doing and get those who had to hide into the secret room in 70 seconds. Father and I worked on stalling techniques, which we would use if the Gestapo came through the shop door, and Betsy did the same at the side door. With those delaying tactics, we hoped we could gain life-saving seconds. Soon, we had 3 more permanent boarders arrive: Thea, Mita, and Mary Italy. The moment Mary stepped through our door, I heard this horrid, asthmatic wheezing that had made other hosts unwilling to take her in. So she has asthma, and when she breathes, it just makes a very rattly sound. So we called a family conference of our family and our extended family. "There's no sense in pretending," I began. "Mary has a difficulty that could put all of you in danger." In the silence that followed, Mary's loud breathing seemed especially labored. "So we're going to put it to a vote." And they did a secret vote on slips of paper, and everyone voted unanimously to accept Mary Italy, even with her difficulties. So our family was formed, and here you see a picture of Father and Betsy and Corey, and their, I think we're up to 7 permanent guests. Others might come and stay a day or even a week, but these 7 remained, the nucleus of our happy household. That it could have been happy at such a time and in such circumstances was largely a tribute to Betsy. Because our guests' lives were so restricted, obviously they couldn't go outside at all, evenings under Betsy's direction became the door to the wide world. Sometimes we had concerts, with Leondert on the violin and Thea on the piano. Or Betsy would announce a title of a play with each of us reading a part. One night a week, she talked Yussi into giving Hebrew lessons, and another night, Mita taught Italian. The city now had electricity only a brief time each night, and candles we hoarded strictly for emergencies. When the lamps dimmed, we would go back down to the dining room where my bicycle was set up on its stand. While the others took chairs, one of us would climb onto the bicycle and pedal furiously to make the headlight glow. So last week when we read about this, we talked about Gilligan's Island. If you've seen Gilligan's Island, that they would power the radio or something by pedaling a bicycle and making friction, which can make electricity. So they set up her bicycle on a stand and made it run, and that would glow the little headlamp so that they could read. We changed bicyclist and reader as often as legs or voice grew tired, working our way through histories, novels, plays. Father always went upstairs after prayers and Bible reading at 9:15, but the rest of us lingered, reluctant to break the circle, sorry to see the evening end. One of my biggest unknowns was my own performance under questioning. As long as I was awake, I felt fairly sure of myself. But if they should come at night? Over and over, the group worked with me. Nils, Hink, Leondert, bursting into my room without warning, shaking me awake, hurling questions at me. The first time it happened, I was sure the real raid had come. There was a terrific pounding on my door, then the beam of a flashlight in my eyes. "Get up on your feet!" I could not see the man who was speaking. "Where are you hiding your 9 Jews?" We only have 6 Jews now." There was an awful silence. The room light came on to show Rolf clutching his head with his hands. "Oh no, it can't be that bad." "Think now," said Hink. "The Gestapo is trying to trap you. The answer is, what Jews? We don't have Jews here." They tried again a few nights later. "The Jews you're hiding, where do they come from?" I sat up groggily. "I don't know, they just come to the door." Rolf flung his hat to the floor. "No, no, no," he shouted. "What Jews? There are no Jews. Can't you learn?" "I'll learn," I promised. "I'll do better." And sure enough, the next time I woke, a little more completely. 6 shadowy forms filled the room. "Where do you hide the ration cards?" a voice demanded. "Under the bottom stair, of course, but I didn't say it. I would not be trapped into saying so." A crafty reply occurred to me. "In the clock on the stairwell." Kik sat down beside me and put an arm around me. "That was better, Tanty Corey, but remember, you have no ration cards except for the 3 of you." With repeated drills, I got better, but I worried. When they were real Gestapo agents trained in getting the truth from people, how would I perform? At some point, let's see, I was trying to, here's a picture of them in their home, having their nightly concerts or different things. And they could do that without fear of their neighbors because they could, be playing the piano amongst themselves. I wanted to read this right here. One night, Father and Betsy and I prayed long after the others had gone to bed. We knew that in spite of daily mounting risks, we had no choice but to move forward. This was evil's hour, and we could not run away from it. Perhaps only when human effort had done its best and failed would God's power alone be free to work. So she and Betsy had just had this discussion that should we keep going or should we stop? And they agreed that with God's help, they could not stop, not in this hour of evil.